With the 2024 NFL season upon us, there are many questions that need to be answered, especially before the start of week one. The biggest question is there going to be a three-peat or is there going to be a new champion crown? That and these many questions will be answered during the 2024 edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Zach! Don't do it! Woo! No way! Woo! 85! Crying out loud! You're making me, you're driving me nuts!
But behold,
Welcome back, all you gabbers. Thank you once again for joining us for Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Of course, I am Mr. CeeLo. Want to get started today because we got a long one here. We're going to go through the week one slate as the NFL season is finally arrived. Yep. And your boy Mr. CeeLo is here to top it all off for you. But I want to get started as I always do with letting you guys know who's been out there commenting, talking trash as usual. And the one, I'm going to say it like this, and it's kind of annoying as heck. Do I like Pat McAfee's show? I do, but I think a lot of the people that follow this group are just absolutely annoying and ignorant. Like Frank said about the Aaron Rodgers return to cement his greatness while crushing the Chiefs three-peat show that I put out there. Frank says he needs to retire. That's a show for sure. Now, as I said many times, I don't mind you guys having a opinion on something, but at least have some type of realistic reasoning behind it. The Jets are going to be a good football team. And then not to mention, I had about 5 or 6 people laugh at this notion. People, they don't need Aaron Rodgers to play great. They just need him to be better or just halfway better than Zach.
What a dumbass!
That's it.
Stop the cap!
Zach Wilson was absolutely terrible. And they have guys like Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams. They are loaded at the wide receiver position. I don't understand what the issue is with people seeing the Jets beating the Chiefs as far-fetched or even winning a Super Bowl. There's a title of an article on ESPN that says the Jets are the true definition now of Super Bowl or bust. And what happens when you're dealing with a desperate team that has a desperate quarterback to conserve his legacy? Say what you want to about Aaron Rodgers in his personal life, but he is trying to preserve his legacy. And what better way than to do it with a defense that is that good? A defense that's that good with the firepower he has, along with an Aaron Rodgers to facilitate those weapons. Then you had a group, NFL fans on CBS Sports. Now, these guys are pretty daggum rowdy as well. Aaron Rodgers returns to cement his greatness while crushing the Chiefs three-peat. This is another show. You guys go check it out. It's actually a good one. Mark says, in Nutsville. Eric would say, yeah, okay, bud. Good luck with that one. Our down years are better than your best years. And here's the reality. I'm taking notes on all of this because I want to turn around and slap these fans back in the face, because here's the reality. The Chiefs are not going to have Hollywood Brown for the first week against the Ravens. Now, is this by design? Who knows? But I'm a firm believer in this. You do not want to give Baltimore home field. Home field advantage is going to be paramount to the Kansas City Chiefs this season. Now, granted, Baltimore's got a tough go. They've got 6 games in that division, which is the toughest division in all of sports.
What?
Yeah, I said it. There's not a you could argue the Steelers are the worst team, and that's saying a lot. If the Steelers are the worst team in the AFC North. Oh yeah. But I'm honestly going to tell you, I don't mind when people are trying to be funny, but at least make sure it's funny. But I will say this, before we get into it, because we have a lot to do, I got to tell you this one, because another group of people that is absolutely annoying as well is the Herd with Colin Cowherd. And there was a guy that said, named Tim, he said funny. Then Michael says, in your dreams. And then Rich says, number 8 talking inspires more talking. Ha 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 ha. Then Rich says, I can't. Then Eric says, ha ha ha. That is all. And this is the thing. When there's a difference between talking trash and actually knowing what you're talking about. And see, that's why I don't mind putting people on blast when they say asinine things. I'm here because there are not enough people in the media that talk about certain things. Now, I know people are going to say, well, we've been talking about the Jets. Well, guess what? You've only seen a handful of Cowboy shows that I've done. I'm not a believer in the Cowboys. And when the Cowboys do something that I believe in, of course, I am going to. But let us get into it. Week 1. We have the Atlanta Falcons and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, there are a lot of people that are looking at the Atlanta Falcons and saying that they could be the darlings of the NFC because now they have a quarterback to go with that stellar defense that they have now. Well, stellar is not the word I like to describe the Atlanta Falcons defense now. They're really good on the back end with Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates, and A.J. Terrell. But I still have questions at that right corner and that nickel. However, pairing Grady Jarrett with Matthew Judon, if they can get some kind of a pass rush, just any essence of a pass rush, they're going to be dangerous. The only question is whether Mike Hughes and D. Alford can be up to par with containing Russell Wilson and those other receivers that the Pittsburgh Steelers bring to the table. And what receivers are we talking about? Well, you got Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, and of course George Pickens. Now this would have been a totally different looking game had the Pittsburgh Steelers been able to land Brandon Ayuk. But I do believe the reason why that deal never went down was because the 49ers wanted George Pickens in exchange for Brandon Ayuk. I totally believe that's what that was all about. And I honestly thought that they were going to, they being Pittsburgh, were going to go after Terrace Marshall. That was a huge shocker to me. But they do have Scotty Miller, and they're very short. They're very short on receivers, but they do have Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth. Now, these two guys are going to be huge against the Falcons. If the Falcons are going to lose this game, it's going to be on the backs of these tight ends because Russell Wilson, as we know, he likes to take shots, and that's what George Pickens and Van Jefferson do well. But Freiermuth and Darnell Washington are going to be featured, in my opinion, if they're going to win this game because their offensive line has still got issues. They still have problems. And not to mention they have Swiss Army knife Cordero Patterson. He's a wonder, but he's been hurt the last 2 seasons. Not to mention we could see the Pittsburgh Steelers do, they're like a America's Team 2.0. They will do all kinds of different things. Justin Fields is not going to sit on that bench all season. There are going to be plays where they bring Justin Fields in, and they're going to allow him to use his athleticism, whether it's to get a first down, whether it's to get a push, or some kind of. They may even have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields on the field at the same time. I would not rule that out. But the way I see this game is the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to take a beat down early in this game. Because, honestly, you got Ogunjobi, Cameron Haywood, and, of course, the one and only T.J. Watt to pair with Patrick Queen. Y'all forgot about that. Not to mention they've got Joey Porter, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Dante Jackson in that secondary to go with Alex Highsmith on that other edge. This defense is still a defense that can hurt you. They are a great defense. And honestly, one of the questions I do have about the Falcons is on the offensive line. Now, while the Falcons have a ton of weapons, from Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McCloud, Rondale Moore would have been huge had they been able to keep him healthy. Not to mention Kyle Pitts.
God damn!
Now, they've got some guys that can still play well on that offensive line, you know, Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom. But what is going to ultimately decide this ball game is how clean they keep Kirk Cousins. Now, I will say this. Kirk Cousins gets rattled, his game goes in the toilet. Reality check, the Falcons season rides on the back of Kirk Cousins. Just like the season of the Steelers rides on how effective Russell Wilson is. Now, nobody's asking Russ to get 4,000 yards passing, but not to make bad decisions. Kirk Cousins is going to have to play well and get the ball to these playmakers. That's what they're banking on. But as far as the game goes, it's a toss-up for me. I see the Falcons not playing a lot. Kirk Cousins is coming off of an Achilles injury. But I also see that the Steelers are not much better in themselves. I see the Atlanta Falcons attempting to run the football with Raheem Morris's skill set. And same thing with Pittsburgh. I see them attempting to try to do the same thing. I don't think any offense is able to do anything. I think Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts are the difference. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons in their home opener. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, to the next game, which is the home opener for the Buffalo Bills, as they welcome in the Arizona Cardinals. Now, you can have your opinions as to whether or not the Buffalo Bills have absolutely screwed themselves by trading away Stephon Diggs. I think this is where the Buffalo Bills have basically said, all right, this is what we're going to do. We are going to take away a number one option and see if Josh Allen's taking the next step in order to reinvent himself as a ball distributor. Where they drafted Keon Coleman, took Curtis Samuel in free agency, Khalil Shakur and Mac Hollins, as well as Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And they still got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Now, it would not surprise me if the Buffalo Bills went to more of a two tight end set, even though they like everybody else have a three wide set. James Cook and Ray Davis are going to have to be more contributors now. I don't know. And this is going to be a season where I look back at them and I say to myself, this season is going to be all predicated on whether or not Josh Allen's going to be able to make plays on his own. Now, you've got Greg Rousseau, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, and AJ Espinoza. And now, as far as the secondary goes, it's ripped. I mean, we see DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp. These are guys that are not accustomed to being full-time starters. So this is going to be new. I got a feeling this is going to be one of those teams they're going to live and die by their pass rush. And they've got a great front four. I love their front four. They've had several major departures and Matt Milano got hurt yet again. You know, speedy recovery for you, my friend. He just cannot buy a season without injuries. But looking at this Arizona, I think ultimately everybody's asking that question, whether or not Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray can become that next 1-2 punch that most people are looking at. As you recall, his father was the number one wide receiver of Peyton Manning for many years. Until Reggie Wayne became number one and Marvin Harrison just kind of rode off into the sunset. But I'm looking at this, and this is going to be a make or break year for one Greg Dortch, because honestly, with Marvin Harrison manning the number one position, this should open up more opportunities for Greg Dortch, because Marvin Harrison is going to be a problem. He is going to be a huge problem for defenses. And honestly, I'm looking at Buffalo, and I don't see anybody that can cover this guy one-on-one. They're going to have to bracket this guy. And Trey McBride is probably going to be a guy that is going to be a huge safety blanket for them. If the offensive line can hold up, this could be a scary game for the Buffalo Bills, and I think it already is. But you're talking about a secondary that's going to be extremely efficient when you look at Sean Murphy-Bunting and as well as Budda Baker with his experience. This is going to be a really good football team that is going to be good on the back end. The question is, how much of a pass rush can they get? That is what they needed, a pass rush. But I'm going to take all things aside. No major talent other than Keon Coleman for the Buffalo Bills at wide receiver. I think this turns into a shootout. And given that I believe that the pass rush favors the Buffalo Bills and it being in their building, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills in this one. But don't be surprised if this turns into a wild shootout. Now, probably one of the games that every NFL football fan in the country is looking forward to. The season debut of Caleb Williams and the Five Heartbeats. Well, the reason why I call them the Five Heartbeats is because they're going to be heartbreakers. Because judging by what I saw in that preseason finale, I was very impressed with the Bears offense. Between DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, and even Rashawn Johnson. They're deep in that backfield. You got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, he's showing that he's still that dude. Then you got Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett, and not to mention they've got the ageless wonder Mercedes Lewis as their third tight end. The only question is the offensive line. Now, we've seen teams say, hey, look, we're going to go out and get a great offensive player at the tackle position, at the guard position. But the problem you run into is I think you're getting more and more teams that are going away from the actual protective ways of doing things, and they're wanting the improvisation. Just watching Cam Ward yesterday at Miami is living proof of that. You're going to see this guy probably go number one in the draft this year because of his improvisation skills. Most of your big plays come from those improv plays that break down. If you get a quarterback that is capable of extending plays when they come off target, you really don't have a need to have a great offensive line, just one that when you have a 3rd and 5, they have to protect long enough to get the 3-step drop off. That's it. Even if they run a 3-step drop, you got guys taking the ball out of the shotgun and look, catch, throw. I ultimately believe this Chicago Bears offense is going to be so wide open. I think they're going to be. This is a team that if you want to get Caleb Williams in fantasy, have at it. I'm even going to try to get this kid because he's going to be great. Looking at the Tennessee side of things, Will Levis along with Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Boyd. And this is unseated Treylon Burks as a starter and Westbrook Ikhine. But they're their backups. Now, looking at what the Tennessee Titans have on offense, this is going to be a shootout. Because I'm looking at the defense and I'm saying Sebastian Joseph Day at the edge. Then you got Jeffrey Simmons. Chidi Awuzie came over from the Bengals. And L'Jarius Sneed. This is going to be a battle. And Caleb Williams does not want any part of this secondary. So I would say more than likely your tight ends are going to get a lot of throws. Not saying he won't challenge them, but I guarantee you Keenan Allen, if he's playing in this game, and I've heard he's going to, you're going to see DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze eat up that slot some. However, let's look at the defensive side of things for the Bears as Will Levis looks at the front four of the Bears. Now, this is where I think this game's going to be won. The Bears have a much better front seven than the Tennessee Titans. You've got Jack Sanborn, you got Tremaine Edmonds, DeMarcus Walker, Andrew Billings, and Montez Sweat. DeMarcus Walker coming in here being that guy opposite of Montez Sweat. And then you got to remember, you got guys like Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson at the corners, as well as Kyler Gordon, who had a pretty good season last year. But you're talking about a defense that, in my opinion, is much better than what the Tennessee Titans are bringing to the table. They're bringing a great offense, but I'm still not sold on their defense. Now, their secondary, oh yes. Oh yes. But this line is going to have to get pressure. It would not surprise me if I saw the Tennessee Titans go with a 5-man, 6-man pass rush majority of the day. But how I see this game folding up, I see that the Bears get back to getting a good pass rush, and I see Caleb Williams being able to do his thing all over the field, although I think there's going to be some rust. But I ultimately think Caleb Williams gets it done over Will Levis, and the Bears get a start on a possibly promising season. Now, looking at possibly one of the easiest games of the week. Now, a lot of people are probably going to say, they talking about us. He talking about us. He's saying look, the New England Patriots do have a pretty good defense, but here's the reality. You're going against the Cincinnati Bengals. And between Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins, and I honestly wished that Ja'Marr Chase had not held out. I'm totally against the guy holding out when this organization pretty much guaranteed most of your money as a rookie, and you've been out a large part of the last few seasons. So I'm all about, you got to be about team, which is right now the Cincinnati Bengals organization wants to win a ring, and undoubtedly they should have. Unfortunately, they're not looking to put T. Higgins in their future plans, so they franchised them. And ultimately, this is why I think, as far as the Bengals go, they need to do better by T. Higgins. You can wait, Ja'Marr Chase. You picked up your 5th-year option. You need to be happy and go out here and fulfill your obligation to them at this moment, which is give them a Super Bowl. That's the way I feel about it. He needs to go out there and show the Cincinnati Bengals he's worth paying the dollars to. Simple as that, Ja'Marr. I love your game. I wish you were a Carolina Panther. But the fact of the matter is you have to fulfill your obligation, not only to this organization, but to your fans. Now, as far as this game goes, the New England Patriots have a decent defense, but then you have to look at it from this standpoint. The Bengals have a very good front four. New England has a suspect front five. You got Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Gaither, Cam Taylor-Britt is back, DJ Turner's, Geno Stone and Jordan Battle are stepping in, even though Von Bell is back. Listen, this is going to be an issue. And not to mention, to me, a guy who's going to go Hall of Fame early because Mike Hilton's going to go down as one of the greatest nickelbacks. He's back. This is not a matchup that New England wants. I get it. I totally get it. People are going to say, okay, Jacoby Brissett's the starter. Drake May, this, that, and the other. You got guys like Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk could have a good game, but I don't think these defensive backs for the Bengals are going to worry about it. Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson are going to have big games. I think they can somewhat run the ball, but I don't count on it. I'm not counting on New England's defense to make any much of a huge roadblock on the Cincinnati offense. So with that, I think T. Higgins has a big game. I think is even argued. The one question I have about Cincinnati is there going to be their ability to run the ball? Because I'm not a fan of Chase Brown, not a fan of Zach Moss, not even a fan of Trayvon Williams. That was the one mistake I think Cincinnati made, was not getting a quality running back, especially when you had a guy like Dalvin Cook out there, who would have been perfect for your offense. You could have gotten at a good price. But I think Cincinnati ultimately wins this game. I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think Cincinnati pulls away and makes this an ugly win, a big one, as a matter of fact, and then they move on to week 2. The money matchup of the week. Well, other than the Thursday night game. The money matchup of Sunday, which I'm just absolutely drooling over to watch. The Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. Now, a lot of people are going to ask me, why is this the thirsty matchup of why is this my gab matchup of the week? Well, it's simple. Let's look at Houston and Indianapolis. Now, the reality of it is, Indianapolis, I get what people are going to say. Indianapolis is a team that you've got Anthony Richardson coming back from injury. Now, the reason why I say that is it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with his return. Now, I'm excited to see rookies Latu and Mitchell come out and do what they do, because here's the reality. Anthony Richardson sold me on his fact that he could go out there and run with the football. He sold me on that. Now they've got a full deck with Jonathan Taylor. Now, I think he played maybe 1-2 games with Richardson last season. And that's going to be big, because with his running ability, it's going to be different. Now, here's the reason why I like Adonai Mitchell with his size. You've already got Michael Pittman as your guy. You already wrapped him up for big dollars. But see, the thing is, Pittman's 6'4" himself. And then you pair him with a bona fide superstar in Adonai Mitchell, who's 6'2", plays like a guy that's 6'4". You know, he might be officially 6'2", but he's 6'4" in the way I see him play. His long arms and his ability to go up and get balls. You don't want no part of this. And not to mention that they've got speedy Josh Downs. This is going to be a nightmare when he gets out of the pocket. If the Colts can understand that, if they can get Richardson to understand and get his receivers to roll with him when he gets out of the pocket and just go downfield, he's got a gun. Especially when you got Mitchell and Pittman running down the field. If you get those two down the field in one-on-one situations with a safety or a corner, I'm going to take my odds on them every time. However, I'm looking at the defense, and you do have some good players. You know, you got Lewis and Pay, Latu, as I said before, Raekwon Davis. But the secondary is a problem. And I've heard many guys on many shows say that Indy's secondary is a concern. They didn't address that like you saw Detroit and Houston did. There were several guys in this draft that they could have dealt with this problem with. Now, they did address the nickel in Kenny Moore. But the problem is, you're seeing so many people say, "Oh, I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for that." Well, you gotta clam up the dough somewhere. Now, here's where the issue comes into play. This is what's going to decide this game, in my opinion. Because here's the thing: C.J. Stroud. I don't know if they're going to be able to go toe for toe with this his Houston offense. C.J. Stroud, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. And then they got better on the offensive line too. Not to mention you got Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods, and John Mechie III, whom we're hearing rumblings that he could be dealt. And not to mention you've got Dameon Pierce as the backup running back, as well as Cam Akers. I don't see Indy having enough on that defense to slow him down. I mean, to me, it's up to C.J. Stroud to play point guard. Who's going to get the ball? And then you got Joe Mixon, who is a finisher. As much as people in Houston love Dameon Pierce, he wasn't the finisher and closer that Joe Mixon was. And they've got the line to do it. It wouldn't even shock me if C.J. Stroud threw the ball an average of 30 times a night, because Joe Mixon's that dude. Cincinnati's going to wish they had not let this guy walk. Let's look at the defense. I said C.J. Stroud was going to decide the game, but honestly, Indianapolis would be better off hoping they get out of this game with Richardson not on the injured list again. Because with Will Anderson, Edwards, and Danielle Hunter,
Damn you!
then you got to think, we are hearing rumblings out of Houston that Derek Stingley is ready to take that next step to being a superstar corner. And this is the thing. And then you got Kamari Lassiter, Jimmy Ward. And here's the reality. What are you going to do with this guy? What are you going to do with this defensive line of the Houston Texans now that they've got a superstar pass rusher to go with their young superstar pass rusher? We all know DeMeco Ryans is all about being able to get pressure with 4. And not to mention Stingley's having the type of year, preseason and camp that he's having. What are you going to do with that? As far as the game goes, I have to say that I think Indy keeps it close because it's home, but I think this defense is going to generate turnovers, pressures, and give Houston the first road win of the season. All right. Let us continue on. The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Miami Dolphins. Now, this game is going to be a game of who's playing and who's not playing. And the reason why I say that is because you got Christian Kirk, who's questionable to play in this game. And you got Olakun is possibly not going to play in this game. He's questionable. Then you got Tyreek Hill, who's got a question. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Odell Beckham have questionable marks next to them. And then you already got River Craycraft and Anthony Schwartz that are all on IR. Most are expecting them to play. Aaron Brewer is questionable. And then you got Poyer, Holland, Ramsey, Jalen Phillips, all questionable. Now, with that being said, do I think the Dolphins... Now, I'm going to give you two predictions, and of course, you know how they're going to flip. Now, if Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Odell Beckham sit out this game, I honestly see this not being a problem. The Jaguars will win this game. End of story. However, if all 3 of these guys play in this game, a lot of people are going to say, oh, this is easy. Well, it's not easy to say. Now, because Trevor Lawrence has 3 new toys to play with. He's got Devin Duvernay. How did Baltimore let him walk out of here is beyond me. Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, and Parker Washington. This is going to be a major move. This is going to be a major situation if the Dolphins don't win this game. I mean, if the Dolphins don't get these guys on the field. Now, to me, this is a make or break season for Trayvon Walker. To me, I have always said most Georgia players are overrated when they come to the NFL. He showed up about 6 games last season, but here's the problem. They don't pick you number 1 to show up 6, 7 games out the year. They pick you up to do what Josh Hines Allen, formerly known as Josh Allen, is doing. Disrupt game plans. He doesn't do that enough to warrant a number 1 selection. But I'm not going that far. But I will say this. Do I think these defenses mean anything? Yes. Miami's defense, they have to have Jalen Phillips back. They've got to get him back on the field. They do have Calais Campbell, but they're going to have Jalen Phillips back in order for this defense to have the bite that it needs. Same thing with Jalen Ramsey. They did, Kendall Fuller slated to play, but I'm gonna be honest with you, Jacksonville's got way more firepower than people think, and this is a make or break year for in a lot of people's minds for Trevor Lawrence. But I think he proves them wrong, and I think, as I said, even if Tyreek Hill and company play, I'm going to say it like this. I think the advantage goes to the Miami Dolphins. So I think the Dolphins win this game, but it's going to be a shootout. But don't forget, if those 3 guys are out, which I don't think they will be, I think the Jaguars will win, but I'm taking the Dolphins. The Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Panthers have to travel to New Orleans for their opener against the Saints. Now, for me, the Saints have been a question mark since the Drew Brees era ended. They've had questions at quarterback, and honestly, they have been a wild card. Whereas the Carolina Panthers are much of the same. They're trying to figure out who is going to be the quarterback. And if the quarterback that they have is the right guy. Now, we saw the Carolina Panthers in their final preseason game give their starters one series, and they looked relatively good. They drove 78 yards for 6.
So
You got Chuba Hubbard being the starter with rookie Jonathan Brooks on the sideline, still recovering from an ACL. Miles Sanders will assume the backup role. Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, Jonathan Mingo make up the starters. And then you got rookie David Legette, and then David Moore. Then you also have Tommy Tremble, who's also questionable, Ian Thomas, and then you got rookie Jatavian Sanders, who showed some promise during the preseason. But the big additions for the Panthers is they added Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. They invested $150 million into these guys to come out and do what they do, which is protect the middle of the offensive line for Bryce Young. Defensively, I'm concerned about them because they lost a lot of players from Jeremy Chin to Brian Burns, as well as Frankie Louvu, not to mention Edo Gross-Matos to the 49ers. But then you got questionable designations by Xavier Woods, and DJ Wonnum, who's supposed to be your starter, is going to be out the first 4 games. So you've either got DJ Johnson going to step in there, or Eku Leota is going to step in there and start. But you made some really good changes as it relates to the waiver wire. You got a guy by the name of Michael Jackson, and this is a guy who's a big physical corner, which is going to play right into what Ichiro Avera wants to do. Then you got the 6'3" Isaac, which is a big physical corner, which you guys know I love big physical corners. And then you got Bartholomew from the Jets. And, of course, you got Troy Hill along with Shaw Smith-Wade. But, honestly, I think it's going to come down to whether or not they can get pressure on Derek Carr. Because, ultimately, what's got to happen if you're the Carolina Panthers, you have to be able to pressure Derek Carr and rush him into mistakes. Because, ultimately, if you cannot do that, he can, in essence, pick you apart. Because they still have Alvin Kamara. They got Jamal Williams. Chris Olave is still one of those top-notch Ohio State superstar caliber wide receivers. And it's going to be a great matchup with he and J.C. Horn. But then you got Rashid Shaheed. And outside of that, Cedric Wilson could step in and take A.T. Perry's spot. But then you have tight end Juwan Johnson. But the guy who garners the most attention is going to be Taysom Hill when he comes in. How do the Panthers defense react? How are they going to react? The question is, can they react and get things done can they put a stop to the Saints offense while they're in the game? Now, the question I have is, do the Panthers have enough, and do the New Orleans Saints defense have enough? The question is, they got the old-timer Cameron Jordan still playing and Carl Granderson. Then you got Pete Warner and Demario Davis, who's got a question mark, who's questionable. Then they've still got Marshawn Lattimore, the ageless wonder, Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's backing him up. We could see him. And Tyrann Mathieu at the safety. I'm just going to say this game's going to be won in the trenches. And right now, I do not like what the Saints have in the trenches. So if Coach Avero, and to me, Coach Avero is going to get in there and he's going to put the thing down. He's going to put the foot on the gas. And I think with that, Derek Carr makes mistakes. And I think the Panthers pull the upset in New Orleans despite it being loud. I think the Panthers pull the upset. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Jets. Now, it was just about a week or two ago. We already knew what the deal was going to be with the Vikings when J.J. McCarthy went down. And right now, you're looking at a football team, in my opinion, you're looking at teams that are fighting for that first pick next season. I think the Giants are going to be one of them. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they just signed Jones to a big deal. Well, they're not obligated to stay in it. And I think them allowing Saquon Barkley to walk was a huge indication of what they're doing. They're slowly but surely trying to rebuild. I think Daniel Jones goes through this season and then they move on from him because there are going to be too many selections for this team to have and to warrant. Now, defensively, they're going to stay in a lot of games. To me, looking at this defense with Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau, this is a nightmare for an offensive line. Anybody can say what they want about Brian Burns. He's never had a guy as good as Kayvon Thibodeau on the other side of him. Kayvon Thibodeau is going to show out this season. He's going to be one of the few blown spots. He and Brian Burns to go with Deonte Banks and guys like Adoree Jackson who are playing in that secondary. These guys are going to get a lot of interceptions because of the pressure these guys are going to get up front. As far as the game goes, I think Daniel Jones can make enough plays because to me, the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold is at the helm of an offense that has Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, and they've got the arsenal. The question I have is how much protection are they going to be able to give? That's the question. How much protection are they going to be able to give them? And then defensively, you've got the ageless wonder and Harrison Smith, Stephon Gilmore, Shaquille Griffin, and Byron Murphy at the nickel. I think the secondary is exceptionally good. Jonathan Greener they got from Houston, which was I said that was a huge move and a bad move by Houston. Andrew Van Ginkel is here. Blake Cashman's here. Gruger Hill is here. So I think defensively they're going towards a defensive approach, but that's not going to bode well for guys like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and of course Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is going to get a lot of carries along with Ty Chandler. So the way I see this game brewing up is Sam Darnold's they're going to try to run the football, and I would say that is probably going to be their only opportunity to win this game. Now, on the flip side, with the Giants, all the Giants have to do is not make too many mistakes. This is going to be a low-scoring game because both teams are going to be afraid to make mistakes with their respective quarterbacks. So, in my opinion, I think if I had to list the two, I would say even though the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Giants are pretty equal when it comes to playmakers, I would venture to say that I would take the Giants at home. These two are going to be fighting for the cellar. That's the way I look at it. But I'm taking the Giants.